we're here tonight for, I would say, a pretty interesting fireside chat. We often talk about things like community and startups and what that actually means and why it matters in the end. But really, what does it mean? And we have the guest tonight that knows about all of this. My name is Chris Foltz. I'm one of the global entrepreneurs in residence for Founder Institute. I love the San Francisco program. It's where I got my start in the startup space, if you will, and learning the importance of mentorship and acceleration. So it's great to be back here where it all began for me. I can tell you right now that somebody that understands the importance of community, the importance of mentorship, and the importance of actually learning and surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you is our guest tonight. Derek Andersen, I got to tell you, I'm such a fan of this person. He just doesn't know. I was fanboying a bit before we started. I'm actually speaking at Startup Grind in Stockholm, October the 7th, I think, Derek. And, I'm such a fan of everything that you've done. But for those of you that don't know what Derek has done and why he's the person we have here for Starting Community is because he's done it in some fairly prolific ways. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Startup Grind. Startup Grind is the largest startup community in the world, more than 5 million members to this, and, more than 125 countries. And I got to tell you, that is super impressive. But then if that wasn't enough, Derek, you went and created Bevy, something that can actually support building community and ecosystems at such a, we'll call it at such a real world level. When I'm saying when you need to deploy something that matters in the community space, you've actually created solutions to help other people do it. Somebody could probably literally create a competing startup grind because of you, Derek. And I guess that's the goal for everyone is how do you actually make the next generation take the reins and go further. And, Derek, tonight we're here talking about community and a lot of things. I've got some questions about that. But, I want you to, if you just don't mind, tell us your story. Tell us some of the things that were challenges for you. And more importantly, how you got over these obstacles, how you got to that first big break, whether it be funding or product launch. Derek, I'm very interested in this story. Welcome tonight to FI San Francisco. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. And great intro. It made me want to go sign up for Founders Institute. I went and looked at the website again, checking it all out, and pretty amazing what you all do with that. And what Adeo is sort of led the charge on with that. I was going to just share a couple of stories and just trying to think about. It's really easy for me actually to think about and go back to when no one really cared what I was working on. And maybe that's just sort of mindset that I have or the paranoia that I have about that it can so easily go back to that place. And just like you just can't take anything for granted. So I quit my job 13 years ago in 2009, almost to the day. And I just wanted to be an entrepreneur and wanted to be creative and control my own time. And, I within a few months, I had an idea, and within a few months, it kind of failed spectacularly. My best friend and co-founder at the time wasn't able to quit his job. So it's just me. It was really his idea. I wasn't super excited about it. I just was excited to do something. And then that turned into something else. And I at one point raised $250,000 in angel funding to build a game. And I built the game, we shipped it, and it was a spectacular failure. My nieces and nephews were the only ones that liked the game. They still talk about it, which kind of makes me feel weird because I know they're the only ones that liked it, or they're the only ones that ever said that. So it's like, I don't know if they're like playing a joke on me or something or what, but anyway, so like lost all the money, felt super bad for myself for a little while. And then I picked up this guy, Steve Blank's book called 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And in it talks about something that Chris was talking about, which is product market fit and going and getting customers, and don't do marketing until you actually have something people like. And I didn't, all that made sense. I had not done any of that. So that I started on the next thing, and meanwhile, some friends and I started hosting these events in my office. in Mountain View, California. And it was really simple. It was just about brainstorming and coming together and sharing information. And it was just sort of a forum for good people to get together. And anyways, fast forward, a couple of years, and nobody really liked the product I was working on, but they loved these events. And there was this community that was forming around, or had formed around, these just monthly experiences. And the values of Startup Grind were about giving more than you take, helping others first, and making friends, which, the values of a company, I think, as the way I understand it, are really, they should either embody the values of the founding team, or the sort of aspirational values of the founding team. And so we put these values on our website, and over time, people wanted to be a part of it. And so we started out in 5 cities, and then 10 and 20. And, I didn't work any harder on that idea than any of the other things I've ever worked on, but it just had this natural momentum. People wanted it. It was something that resonated with customers. And so there was a market for it. And so eventually, we grew that to be 100 or so cities. And then in 2015, we started experiencing these really painful growth pains. And Startup Grind's a bootstrap company. So as Chris was talking about that, made payroll in Startup Grind for, I don't know, 12 years or something like that, 10 or maybe 11 years. And that's we had offers to raise funding. It didn't feel like a scalable venture-backed business, so we never accepted those. We just kept going. And but we started building software to help us to scale, because we couldn't find any products in the market that really matched what we needed at a price that we could afford. And so we built that in 2015. We didn't get any customer feedback. We didn't talk to anyone, no discovery. It was just, we built it for ourselves and for Startup Grind. And then we launched in 2016. And it's like, imagine, you build a product and you get one of the biggest customers in the market as your first customer. You can just imagine the amount of pain and headache and trouble that our beta, product, and was not ready for prime time. And our great chapter directors let us hear about that in a very nice ways. Anyways, after about 6 months, though, our growth started to take off again. We went to 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 cities. And then I started to show that product to people in the community space. People like Startup Grind. And actually, the very first person I talked to about it and showed them the product asked me if he could buy it. And he became our first customer. And I was like, wow, this is so easy. Anybody I talk to, they just buy it. And he's like, well, how much is it? Oh, I want it, but how much is it? And I don't know. I just made up a price. Said, how about $20,000 a year? And he's like, oh yeah, I'll pay that. It's like, dang it. I should have said 40. That was dumb. Then I try the next person, I tell them 40. They're like, I would pay 40 for that. It's like, oh shoot, back to 20. So you try and figure that out. And then a few months later, we somehow managed to get in this RFP for Atlassian, who was looking at solving this problem for them. And by some miracle, they picked us. And I remember, it's like a $70,000 ARR deal, 120K total ACV on the first year. It's a big deal. And, it's really good, like a great brand, amazing brand. But I remember as we got close to closing, the VP over there is like, what's your website? Like, you got to send me the link to your website. I got to show this to the president. And I said, we don't have a website. And many of the mistakes I had made, through these years of trying to build products, explicitly, we did not. One of the things is sometimes entrepreneurs will sort of force an idea, or you kind of make up a problem. And I was definitely guilty of that. And one of the things that I decided was I was not going to force this software thing, this Startup Grind software. If people wanted it, then they would have to really want it. And this is one of those things. We didn't have a website. if they wanted it, they'd have to buy it without a website. And that I would make me know that they really wanted it, which is really dumb. But they bought it and they, and they signed it. And then the next month we set up a new company and we spun out the software. A few months later, I almost ran out of cash. I was within 6 weeks of running out of money. One of two of the most terrifying experiences I've been a part of in my entrepreneurial career, both running out of money, terrifying. But we had a 20-person team. So these were like real lives. It wasn't just me and my co-founder anymore. And within 6 weeks, by sort of, a miracle, we were able to raise $1.1 million. And we got everyone out of Startup Grind and onto this other payroll, and Startup Grind, kind of just limped along for a while and then, caught its breath. And then we started going from there, and we signed up Duolingo and we signed up MuleSoft, and just one at a time. I was sales, I was success. My co-founders are both engineers. So it worked. And then the next year, we were able to sign Salesforce to become a customer. And so we power their Trailblazer community. And I knew when I did that deal that I was going to be able to raise another round. I had to, because we had promised all the security stuff that's really expensive that we would do. And so I couldn't actually even pay for it unless I raised funding. But I knew that with Salesforce, the customer, I could raise a round. And we were able to do that the next month, and which I had been working on, but it was like the catalyst to close. And we raised about $5 million. And then, we just kind of plugged along for about a year and a half, and slowly just growing the revenue and trying to keep customers happy. And then, heading into 2020, we signed Google, and just an unbelievably important moment. And it was, I'd been pitching them for 4 years, and we were able to get them to finally come over and agree. There's all sorts of things that happened that were out of our control that finally navigated them to us. We signed a 3-year deal with them at the time. And I knew when we signed that deal, we were going to have to raise funding because I had to grow the engineering team to build all the stuff that we promised them. And I knew that we could. And so I'll just kind of stop there. But it's just to say that, what I've learned raising a lot of money for me anyways, is that it really doesn't matter. And it's so easy for me to say, but building something that people love and building something that they will pay for and that they're having success on, that's by far the most satisfying professional feeling that I have been a part of or had. And raising funding or hiring a bunch of people or not, that stuff, none of that stuff. I mean, it's really great to be an influencer, to help be a part of providing for a lot of people. But actually nothing comes close to just having a few customers that really love what you're doing, and to build on that and build on that and build on that. And lots of other good things come after that, as long as you're focused on that. So that's me. That's all. Chris, that's my...
Derek, man, I got to hand it to you. I mean, I'll be honest, you pretty much violated all the known rules of the startup path with such precision. And when I say precision, you've done it in such an amazing way. So, when you say you didn't do the customer discovery and customer validation, you did. You probably just did it sometime earlier that it didn't seem like a formal setting because you were so dialed in.
Yeah, I was.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, yeah, I didn't do specific discovery because I had become in 5 or 6 years an expert in the problem without knowing I was an expert. And also I had scaled without the tools. And so we knew exactly what we wanted to use to scale. And so we essentially every day we're working with the best customer to have. It was us.
Yeah, and to be honest, like as you're going through this, it really is a breath of fresh air, because I meet a lot of founders, and I think what's been happening, especially in Silicon Valley, is especially investors, I think they have the idea that building things, especially tech, is so fast. And so they're really pushing people to have their MVPs, to have something that they can show. But at the same time, especially for these early stage guys, it's not worth it. There's a stat that always sticks out in my mind. It's like 92% of high growth, and some of them are venture backed early stage startups, they fail in 3 years. 92%. And they were doing a post-mortem, and it was 43%. There was no market need. So 43% of these guys didn't have a product that people actually ended up wanting. And so I feel like that's really the trend. And so it's like seriously such a breath of fresh air to just see how essentially you did do customer development through those years, in your garage with 4 people, and really realizing what this looking for our other process. And so it's awesome. Sorry, Chris, continue.
No, I personally, I couldn't agree with you more, Jeni. I think, Derek, I think you did more customer discovery than most brands have done in history. And you can tell the effectiveness of everything that you've done. It's built in, I can tell in the startup grind community, I can tell with your new software, it's something that is truly in touch with your customer. Now, that being said, you started off in this kind of gaming world, you're designing games, you're doing what a lot of people want to do, right? Some people go to college to do this cool thing, and you were there. But then this side project, startup grind, the side project that you had going on ended up being such a behemoth in the industry. What gave you the courage to actually make the pivot and focus on something like this?
I had you talked about mentors, and I know FI has this huge mentor network. I had this breakfast with this guy who now runs, he was the founder, and he's been very successful. He runs this huge part of Walmart's e-commerce business. His name's Anthony Suhu, and he I knew him from church. We went to church together, and he was kind enough to go to lunch with me, breakfast with me at the Creamery in Palo Alto. And he's like, look, I didn't know him super well, but he had come and spoken, and someone had pitched him on I don't know, this is 2012, and someone had pitched him on buying sheep in New Zealand. And he still to this day, he never lets me forget the sheep pitch. But he said to me, he's like, look, I don't know about this thing that you're spending all your time, money on right now, this other product that we were working on. He's like, but this startup grind thing has some magic to it. He's like, you might want to consider spending a little more time on that and a little less time on this thing that doesn't seem to be going anywhere and no one really understands. And he's very blunt. And it that meeting, I was like, okay, you know what? He's right. And so from that day on, I instead of spending maybe 5% of my time, I started spending 10 or 15% of my time. And then it was, again, I work the same amount on everything. I work 110% on everything. So and this can be really frustrating for people that are hard workers. It's you work so hard, and then it doesn't produce the results. And sometimes, it's a function of not having the right thing yet, and sometimes it can be a totally different idea, or sometimes it can be, 10 degrees off and pivoting a little bit or a lot into something else. But it became clear the more time I spent on Startup Grind, the more it grew. And we had some natural things that made us, we were here. It was right after the Social Network movie, startups really started to take off. We're based in Silicon Valley, so that everyone's coming here and then they're leaving. And and we were really focused on getting the most. We're basically the event with the best speakers, and it was free or cheap, and it was just cool. And so that's those very simple components of community, and content, it resonated with people, and they're like, this is cool. I want to do this when I go home. It's all right, well, let's do that. And it worked, and no one was really more surprised than me.
Well, it's nothing to be surprised by. I mean, you put in the effort. And what I find fascinating is, you drew attention to the fact you didn't have a website, but you knew, so many people get stuck in this analysis paralysis. And of course, that's why we have such a good roadmap at FI, because, you fall into that death valley that often is talked about, where you're out there, you're pursuing customers and everything, you have no revenues in sight. Here it is, you're going and pursuing investors without something like a website. What do you felt was the thing about, would it be your pitch, about your ethos? Was it your moral centering? What allowed these investors to look at you as something that was worth that investment, even without everything put together yet?
Well, I mean, all investors look at the same things. It's team and its product and its market. And so, with us, like unbeknownst to us, we had become the experts in what we were doing. And look, I had, and this is kind of an unfair advantage with Startup Grind, where I had been interviewing. One of the things at Startup Grind, we do these fireside chat interviews like we're doing now. And, but basically, like, I couldn't get these people to take meetings with me. So I was like, this is an excuse, like, to get Naval Ravikant to come speak, and like I can hang out with him for an hour and like learn from him, and I'll get 100 people in the room. And so that's what we did. Then he saw, or Steve Blank, like, I was reading his books, and he's somebody I admired. And then after that, he's like, hey, let's go to lunch. Like, that was cool. Let's go to lunch. And then, he becomes a mentor. And then, years pass of those, seeing I'm not a terribly low quality person. And like, maybe somebody worth taking a flyer on. And so then I emailed him, when we're like running out of money, and he sends me an email back and says, hey, I'm in for $100,000, which is like really easy way to raise. But like, I had worked I like worked on that relationship for 5 years, and sort of using it at the right moment. And, or I had another guy who had offered me money for Startup Grind that we hadn't taken. And then I brought this other one, and he's like, okay, I'm in for 500, and it was like, because he'd kind of already, spent enough time with me. So I think, again, the sort of the team was great. We had domain expertise, and we had a product that we had, this huge community using our product. So like, why not other communities, potentially also buying it? It's sort of like to de-risk. And then I went and sold. So then we had 200,000-300,000 recurring revenue by the time we raised. So it's like, we de-risked.
Put in the work. You de-risked the company. Exactly what you said. So many people are focused on these upside opportunities, but you didn't try to get everyone to say yes, Derek. You made it very hard for people to say no. I mean, that's clear. But what I find is super interesting is that, as these investors are coming at you, you mentioned that somebody wanted to buy this, right? And I think that's the dream of pretty much every founder. Everyone likes to think they're going to go public, right? I promise you, and you'll learn this just in the environment of the ecosystem of founder and student accelerator space, acquisition is a pretty amazing thing, with a lot less headaches. Why did you pass on that?
Look, I'm kind of in the mindset of like, if you ever watch Arrested Development, there's like the never nude people, like a never sell. You kind of got to become the startup version of never nude, which is never sell. And you're just building it for a long time, like you're in it. You're not, and at the end of the day though, like, if you raise money from people, you're doing that with the sort of social commitment that you're going to return that money. And it's obvious, but it's not my money. Like, I take it, like, sometimes spend it in a way that felt like it was not my money, but I do treat that relationship sacred. And so look, there, if you're going to sell your company, I think you got to align three things. It's got to be a win for your customers, got to be win for your the founders and employees, and it's got to be a win for the investors. And if it doesn't check those 3 boxes, then you can't consider it. And so, you know, and 2, like, they invested in you to go build something great. And so, you know, we had one acquisition when we were really small, when we just signed Salesforce. So still, you know, we were just signed to raise more money. And they didn't realize that because none of it was public. But, you know, I'll tell you something interesting. That company that, you know, the CEO of that company, I shouldn't say who it is, so I'm not going to, but, the company that the CEO came to my house as sort of a first meeting and offered to buy us. That company, has been for sale, and we had the opportunity to buy them since then. Now years later, it's like, couldn't imagine such a turn of events. I can't even imagine it. But you just don't know. Like, it's just as time sort of plays out and you put in every day, every week, you don't know what's going to happen years later. I mean, it could be that you could end up, you know, and I think that's where you see sometimes companies buy other companies. Like, they think this company is going to disrupt them, so they have to buy them. And if it hits those 3 boxes, takes care of your investors, takes care of your customers, takes care of your team, then maybe you should consider it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one thing. I really like that you mentioned that a little bit ago about how it's about relationships. Like, I see too often founders are trying to get the investors' attention too soon, too quickly, and too abruptly. So I remember I was talking to Reed once, and he was telling me about, he still remembers founders that introduced themselves at, like, let's say TechCrunch or some of these events, and just telling them and being excited about their product. And he wasn't ready to invest in them. It wasn't something that he was interested in, but he would always say, keep in touch to the ones that he felt like the founders were super strong. And then that's like the funny thing is, because some of these founders today, they're still talking. Like, he still is wondering about whenever they send newsletters, he's following up with some of them sometimes. And it really is about the relationship. And so I love that that's something that you did. It's like pretty awesome. In 5 years.
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, what kind of game are you playing? And, you know, most high quality people are playing a really long game. And if you think of your startup career, and look, I didn't think this way in the early years. I think you know, at some point you will go into the valley of death. And I think for us, this is another experience where we almost ran out of money. And me and my co-founder, we've worked together for 13 years. I said, look, we need to go look for jobs, and we'll lick our wounds and come back. And we kind of stared death right in the face. And then we managed to sell this company we were going to shut down. We sold it for 80 grand. And it felt like we were millionaires. And it's extended us for 6 months. And after that, like, compared to, like, it's the greatest deal that I've ever done. And because we stared death in the face, and death turned around and walked away. And so, you know, when you live through things like that, and I've been through some things that are probably on the scale of being much worse since then. And I'm not comparing myself to anybody. You know, the early stages are the hardest, but just on the scale of, like, trauma and pain, much more painful, much more trauma. But you know, you sort of know what you're capable of, and it kind of is like, well, it's not going to be as bad as that. When I thought we were done, I knew we were done. We were done, and then somehow, you know, weeks before we were just going to shut it all down out of the sky, we were able to, you know, to extend it 8 months, 6 or 8 months.
I'm so thankful that you were able to do that. You know, one of the things that I think kind of, you know, probably came out of the experiences you had in your life is the startup grind. You know, the startup world lives in this kind of bubble. You know, I mean, it's not necessarily the mainstream everyday business. It's on the quest to be, but for those that aren't part of the startup world, there's a lot of typecasting that goes on. And, you know, what I see that's really amazing about Startup Grind is some of the guests that are at the fireside chats. I mean, they just transcend industry, heads of government, celebrities, you know, people that have experienced things from the startup world, but then also people that have never been in the startup world that still play a crucial role. You know, what was the driving force about, you know, crossing that divide that exists and having real conversations about startups with people, for instance, the mayor of Stockholm? I find that fascinating.
I mean, look, everybody, I've spent 8 years of my life living outside the United States. And the one thing that you learn is that there is no monopoly on talent anywhere. Like brilliant people live everywhere and can come from, I don't know, if you're a growth mindset person, then I've heard this before. It's really bugs me when somebody says, in a company, like when you like change a reporting structure or something, and somebody will say, I can't learn anything from that person. It's trigger. I want to just explode, because like I can have a conversation with a homeless person and I always learn something. You know, like don't tell me you can't learn something from someone. I mean, anyone.
I was homeless, and here we are on the same stage, and I was a homeless person. So I totally get it. And I appreciate that so much.
And so like, you know, like if you're a growth mindset person, like you're willing and understand that you can learn from anyone. This is something I've learned from these people that we've gotten to speak. I don't know any of these people. But you know what I've learned is like really successful, smart people, they read cold emails. And a lot of times they'll read them at 1, 2, 3 in the morning and they'll respond. And I mean, billionaires. And if you're thoughtful, and you know, they're probably getting lots of junk, but if you can say something that seems like this person on the other end of this email is, you know, using their brain and they're, you know, they're making a good pitch, like, sure, like I'll be part of this for an hour. And so and that's, you know, and then that opens another door. So but you know, you got to be thoughtful. This is like cold emailing, like it works. It works with investors. It works with customers. I'm still cold emailing customers. Like, you know, I said that you know, there's a company that I've been trying to get to use Bevy, our software, since 2017. And I missed they picked a vendor 2 months before I got there. I'm not bitter about it or anything. I've been trying to get this company. It's a very well-known company. Everyone here has used this product. Many times. I've been trying to get this company since 2017. We're this close to getting them in 1 month. Like we're in a final review to finally get them. Like it's not even that big of a deal, but it's like that's how long we've been trying. And some of the same people are still there. Some are gone, but some are still there. And it's like we almost got them a year ago, and it was like I was so close. And then now they're back, and it's like we're just like, hey guys, like we're not gonna leave until we do this, because we know it's right. Like it's good for you and it's the right thing to do. And we have conviction. And like, I don't know, that's where I think like the winners are the survivors a lot of times. And you just have to find a way to survive. And sometimes it means, you know, eating your left arm to do that. But the winners are the survivors. And so like we'll outlast anybody. So
that's beautiful. I mean, grit is probably the quality that I look for the most when it comes down to founders, you know, one's ability to overcome obstacles. And you brought up Bevy, you know, and this is what intrigues me. You know, here you've had so much success on multiple fronts. Startup Grind knocked out of the park a while. I mean, we have Startup Grind X, Startup Grind U, you know, really have penetrated into markets that nobody thought were possible. You did it. And you're not a greedy person. Everybody that knows you knows that you're a fantastic human being. You know, you could have just retired and done nothing, but you created another software that I personally believe is going to revolutionize the industry. Why did you even go down the path of Bevy? What inspired that?
I need to get you to just, can you just be my hype man?
I got you, buddy. I got you. I'm just a fan, Derek. You know, that's just how it is. I'm a straight shooter. But, you know, if it wasn't for people like you in the industry, I wouldn't even be inspired. So, I really am interested. What is that driving force that made Bevy what it is? Because right now you're still pursuing. Here we are. We're talking to a founder and a CEO, and you're still doing the everyday work to get things off the ground. You don't have to, but why did you do it? Why do you do it?
Yeah, I would love for you to come do the first practice with my little league teams from now on, if you would, and you could hype me up right before.
I got you, buddy. That's
They're
gonna be
really
fun.
impressed when I start talking. So look, and I think this is where, maybe when I quit my job in 2009, maybe a large part of that was motivated by money. Maybe it was motivated by, arrogance that like I should be the boss or the CEO or something. But what you learn very quickly once you start doing it is actually the things that really drive you, at least that drive me, is being creative. It's working on the things that I think are important, the things that drive me, that get me excited. That my wife says, she says, I know how you get so much done. It's because you work all night. I can hear you talking in the middle of the night. You're always working. I don't know that that's a good thing, but it is what it is, And so look, so like you sort of like whatever that saying is, like, come for the food, stay for the company, or something. Like you may come to FI for what turns out to be kind of a selfish, or not selfish, you're doing it for your family or something, like you for maybe the wrong reason, the wrong long-term reason, but you'll stay and you'll fight through the pain for all the right reasons. And so, like I want to be creative, and I want to build stuff, and I want to work with really great people that I get to have an impact in choosing who they are. And these things are all worth a lot. They're worth all the money that you could make doing something else to do this. And your time, owning your time, like how much is that worth? You find as an entrepreneur, like, wow, it's actually costs you a lot. It's very expensive to own your own time, right? Because you work for somebody else, you can get paid a lot more, usually, or at least in the beginning, for a long time in the beginning. But you realize like it's not fulfilling. And so, yeah, I don't know. I got a lot to prove.
It's the purest answer ever, man. It's almost like, I'm motivated by a lot of things in my childhood. I mean, I still did not become an astronaut. Okay. So it's unfortunate. That was my main drive, but I'm here talking to you, Derek. And, one of the things that was great, you brought up earlier, is how you got some of these great leaders in the room, these mentors, the people to speak. And you realize that by having them on the stage, you would have access to them. They would be part of your community, but they also had to realize the value that it was for them to be on the stage, for them to show up, whether it be to interact, whether it be to network. And I know a lot of founders, the word community has almost become this buzzword nowadays. And my final question is based on that, with everyone saying, hey, we're building a community, and that may just be a Facebook group, it may be whatever, but it's being used so much that people aren't actually building a community. And if they are, it's just a numeric thing. It's nothing. It's not a relationship, as Jeni brought up. It's not somebody that you could ask advice from. It's not people coming together to make change. What would be the bit of advice that you wish you had, back in the day when it came down to looking at community and the role that it played in getting your startups off the ground? And what do you wish that you knew that you can instill on some of these founders that are on their quest to expanding their own communities?
I mean, the CEO of Reddit, founder of Reddit, Steve Huffman, he describes community as the soul of a company. And I like that. It's look, if you're running an oil fracking business, do you need a community? Do you need a soul? I mean, maybe not, but look, if you're building software, if you're building something, from the ground up, and you're trying to be entrepreneurial, and, it's like, it's certainly people, the business case for it is huge, because people don't want to be sold to. They're not looking at ads. People are lonelier than they've ever been in the history of humankind. Like, you can play you can not just solve a problem in people's life, you can bring meaning and belonging in somebody's life through your product, even if it's a business product or something like just that humans need that they're not getting anymore through, through just being alive and that people used to. So you can play a really, really important role in people's lives. For the business case, you can probably make way more money if you've had a community, because you won't have to spend on marketing and as much on sales. You can retain more customers through community. You can product ideate. You can find new ideas through community. But really, community it's at the core of who you are and your founding team is. For us at Startup Grind, it was this guy named Francisco Cruz, who basically embodied everything great about Startup Grind. And I'm still in my garage here at this end. This is the Startup Grind garage there in Palo Alto. So he and I worked here for 2.5 years together, and we did hundreds, thousands of calls. And he would just sort of embody the values better than anybody. And me and my co-founder as well with him, tried to be that, but it was really him and everything that was the sort of center of where our community started. And, Bevy, we bought this community called CMX, which is a community for community professionals. And that's the center. It's the heart of the community industry. So they had the magic, and a guy named David Spinks created that. And it embodies him. And we're so lucky to be part of that and get to so much that community's created for us. But it's whatever the soul is of your company, that's your community. And, the sort of genuine parts of what you want to do to help people in their lives. You kind of wrap that up in what the community is. It could be a Facebook group. It could be events. It could be, 5 other things. But whatever's authentic to you, that can be great.
Well, I got to tell you, your humility is second to none. I really appreciate the garage tour. I'm sure a lot of people would love to have had that garage tour from the famous garages throughout time. And I promise you, buddy, if in 10 years from now, some entrepreneur doesn't pick up the book like you picked up Blank's book and the book by Derek Andersen, where you kind of tell these stories and give that perspective, I think it's a disservice to the startup world. I think that you proved that if you do things for the right reasons, they won't end for the wrong reasons. And I think your track record is a proof of that. So I couldn't be more thankful for you to join us tonight at Founder Institute in San Francisco. And what if people want to get on your radar, Derek, how do they do that? What impresses you?
Well, I'm just Derek at startupgrind.com. Or Derek at Bevy.com. It's really easy. Those are my only email addresses. When people ask me if I can help on things that I have no business helping on, or that's usually kind of a turn off. But it just, again, goes to the thought and, there's something I can do to help, which is usually something involved around SaaS or community or CMX or something related to the startup world. Like those are usually good areas for me. I don't invest a lot. So when people ask me to invest, I'm not really good at it. I'm actually quite terrible at investing. And I'm just not really passionate about it. So I just don't do it. So when people ask me to invest, it's not usually we do actually through Startup Grind, we do now have a fund. So we're doing a little investing there, yeah, like if I can genuinely help or there's somebody, just be thoughtful. That's it.
I just know I'm going to cold email you in the middle of the night. I
It's
know
good.
that my buddy Derek
Yeah,
tells me that that's the way to go. So expect that.
That's what I do.
Yeah, right. That works, right, Pete? I just want to thank you, Derek, for joining us tonight. I think a lot of times people think that there's this interesting competition, Founder Institute, Startup Grind on Techstars and everything. All of us play unique roles in the ecosystem. And, and I love the role that, Founder Institute in the pre-seed stage, but, with Startup Grind, it's truly community. You can come as you are and literally spend a lifetime interacting with some of the greatest events. And for those of you that are joining our FI cohort in San Francisco, it's partners and relationships like Derek that make our programs unique. And you can tell, having access to such a prolific leader is amazing, but imagine having access to 250 mentors that they're not all Derek's, but I can tell you, I don't think there is any other Derek Andersen. So I really, really do appreciate your time, Derek. We hope to cross paths with you again soon. And I look forward to joining your program in Stockholm, October 7th. I'm really excited about it. Finally across
That's the way to get my attention, actually. When somebody says, this happened to me just last week, they were kind of pitching me. We had this big conference at CMX. And he said, he was talking to me about this product. It's like, okay, yeah. And then he said, I was a speaker in Tehran. I was your first speaker in Iran. And as soon as he said it, he had my full attention. So Chris, thank you so much for doing that. I'm eternally grateful for you for going in and helping to build our community. It means a tremendous amount. And thank you for having me here tonight. And yeah, Derek at startupgrind.com if I can if I can be useful to anyone that gets to this point in the video.
And Chris, when you head out to Sweden, let me know. You got to meet up with the Startup Grind photographer Dino.
You know what? And for those of you that are joining the FI program in San Francisco, you're also joining Pete Biggam's Rolodex. And let me tell you, this is the most eccentric Rolodex ever. It's amazing. I hope to be willed that. All right. Well, I really appreciate everything tonight. We're going to call it to a close. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, Derek.